One of the things that we consistently do wrong as a civilization is that we tend to bucketize our topics because it's hard to talk about things until you can put them in categories. But this ends up fooling us because we imagine that the category that we put something into just to make it easy to talk about it, we think it's meaningful. But usually it's just a way to talk about it. Now let me give you an example. If I said to you, there's a decision about COVID health, but then the other variable is the economy and how the economy also translates through to health. You need a good economy to have good health. So we started out with people saying, hey, you're focusing too much on just the direct observable healthcare problem, and you're not focusing enough on this other variable, which is the economy, which also affects your healthcare. Now, I feel as if collectively the minds of the world have indeed shifted, so that now most of us, I think, are now capable of saying, oh yeah, I get it. You can die in two different ways. The economy could be bad or the virus gets you. So you have to have a smart balance of those things to get the right result. What's being left out? So now you've done a good job. You said, oh wait, my buckets, my healthcare bucket is not really separate from my economy bucket. It's just that we put them in buckets because then you've got an economist who looks at the economy, you've got doctors looking at the healthcare. It makes things easier, but it can mislead you because these are not separate buckets. It's closer to being one bucket, but it's just easier to talk about it as two because of the way we separate our experts, right? But what's missing? That's two big variables, economy and healthcare. What one's missing? And this will be your test for a blind spot. In the comments, tell me what topic, which is as big as those. It's as big as a pandemic. It's bigger, actually. It's bigger than a pandemic. And it's at least as big as the economy in importance. Somebody says freedom. That is a correct answer, but not the one I'm looking for. All right? The freedom question is a little trickier, so that's not what I'm going for. But you're correct, right? So I'll give you full credit for the answer, but it's not where I'm trying to take you. There we go. Boom. Somebody got the right answer. Look at all the people who answered, and only one person got the right answer. Military safety. Homeland security. Why? Because you can't have a military without a strong economy. And even if you imagined that your economy still existed, but it took a hit, let's say your economy goes down 20%, will your military be as ready? Not a chance. Not a chance. Because most of your money has to go toward keeping people alive in the short run. Your military is a little bit of a luxury. And that's where your last dollar goes to that. It's like, well, I got to do this too. You would imagine it could be your top priority, but living today is going to be your top priority. So here's the thing. If you imagine that the military questions are this separate bucket, then you can ignore it, right? Just ignore it. That's another bucket. We're not even talking about that. I'm talking about coronavirus. That's the bucket I'm talking about. But if you don't look at this problem as a healthcare plus economy plus homeland defense, military essentially, you've missed 1/3 of the decision. You know, I'm speaking in very rough terms, they're not really 1/3. But a gigantic part of this decision is what are you doing to your homeland defense, right? Does China get, let's say, like a big gain and it catches up to us economically? What would that do to your military preparedness if China pulls to parity with economy? You're in trouble, right? The military is almost perfectly correlated with the strength of your economy. You want to go a little bit further? Let me go a little bit further. We're looking at the climate. when you look at the climate, of course, we made the mistake of saying, hey, this climate could be dangerous and kill people, etc. But at least we were smart enough to say, oh, but there's also this economic part. It's not just about, that you would be dangerously at risk health-wise if global warming is what the scientists are telling you. What's missing? What's missing, once again, is your military. Can you have a strong homeland security and a strong military in this day and age if you don't have energy independence and if it isn't carbon-based? Now, nuclear-based is in there too. You got to have that. Could you have an entirely green economy? Let's say it was possible. Let's say the numbers worked. There's some breakthroughs in solar power. So you got a really good green economy. You get rid of your oil. You get rid of your coal. What happens to you? Well, you become conquered by China, guaranteed. Because if you're powering your tanks with electricity and solar panels, I mean, I'm using a ridiculous example, you don't really have a military. So when people are talking about the Green New Deal, sometimes they'll allow that there's an economic element to that. They'll say it's positive, not negative. I would say that if you don't have an oil-based or a carbon-based energy system with independence, you don't have a military. You do not have a military if you have the Green New Deal. What if you get rid of your nuclear? If you get rid of your nuclear capabilities as, let's say, a domestic power source, you also get rid of your nuclear experts. And suddenly, you can't do nuclear for military either. And you kind of need it for military, because you're not going to power your submarines, etc. Now, what about space? Is it possible to be safe if your nemesis controls space and you don't? It is not possible. It is not even slightly possible that you could be militarily safe if your enemy controls space above you. It's just not even slightly possible that you could be safe from that. All right? You might have mutually assured destruction, but you'd be in a big problem. Now, what are you going to need to have a robust space force? Nuclear power. There probably isn't any alternative to that, right? Eventually, Space Force will be nuclear powered, unless somebody invents, warp drive or something. I don't see that coming. So anytime that people have these conversations where they've simplified it to health versus economics, here's the recording that should play in your mind. You left out the military, because it's all connected. And the military is not trivial. It's necessary, right? It's just not optional. Now, most of us have been born into a world where the United States was so dominant militarily that you have the luxury of not thinking about it as much. It's like, well, we're militarily dominant. Nobody's going to attack our homeland, at least not a military force, just terrorists. And I got a feeling that if you start messing with the energy production, you might clean up the sky a little bit, but you're going to do it at the risk of your military. So if you haven't included that, you're not really doing a proper analysis